يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي وإلى موائد جود مولاك ارعي.
Assalamu alaikum guys. Oh, do me a favor, close the door actually. Close the door, sorry bro. Assalamu alaikum guys, Bilal Sayeed here. Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we are editing my next Instagram post together. I'm going to show you guys exactly how I do it, show you guys the ins and outs, what masking I use, what color grading I use, and what sort of effects I add to make my Instagram post. Now a lot of you have requested for presets and for how I do things and how I edit. I don't have any presets is the honest answer. I do just edit everything the way I feel it needs editing. So I'm going to show you guys an example today of how I would edit this particular photo here on the screen. It's a photo that was taken in Marmaris on my trip to Turkey. If you haven't watched the Marmaris vlog yet, it is out. I will link it here somewhere. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out. Now the aim for this particular photo, as you guys can see, is I want to go for a dusky desert desaturated look, just because it will give it a more moody, cinematic vibe, and that's the aim I'm going for. That is basically how I'm going to edit this photograph. I'll run through that shortly. Before we do get to that though, this video is sponsored by nobody, because I'm not there yet. All right, we're not there yet. So if you are new to the channel, if you are just watching this video for the first time, you know, a little subscription wouldn't harm nobody. And I heard, I don't know if it's true, but I heard word going around is that YouTube made an update, and if you tap that subscribe button, like a nice noise comes up. So check it out. Check it out and let me know what you think. But without further ado guys, let's get straight into this video. Now, the way I'm going to edit it, I'm going to edit it on my phone because I forgot my laptop at home. I'm going to edit it on my phone, but I'm going to screen record my laptop so that you guys can see it on your screen. I'm going to go through exactly the same process and we'll take it from there. So guys, without further ado, this is the image that we are going to be editing. So I'm just going to open up Lightroom for you guys and get the photo selected here. So as you can see, very, very nice. But however, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So the first thing that we're going to do is something that I always like to do recently with with the feed that I'm going for, which is like a beigey, deserty, dusky type theme, is I want to bump up the temperature up a little bit, not too much, maybe by like 10 or 20. And then at the same time, is you want to desaturate the image just to give it a more moody look. And now that in itself, I would deem as post-worthy. However, still a bit more work to do. Another thing that I tend to do, and this is a very, very underlooked part of editing, it's that cinematic look. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the point curve and we're gonna bring the bottom of that curve slightly up and the end of that curve slightly down. And then the point that I've just clicked there, bring it up, and the point that I've brought just there, slightly up there towards the middle. What that does is it creates an S curve. Now that S curve gives it a more contrasty but not too much color of a look, so a more cinematic look is what I like to describe it as. We're bringing up the blacks but in a way that sort of fades the image a little bit, but we're going to compensate for that by bringing the blacks down slightly. And when you do that, naturally the image becomes a bit darker, so we're going to just pop the highlights up a little bit just to give it a bit more balance, if that makes sense. So that's your S curve done. What we're now going to do is we're going to play around with the highlights. I reckon the highlights we can bring slightly up, ever so slightly, and we're going to bring the shadows up slightly, but not too much, and I'll show you why shortly. The whites, I would say we're going to bring down just a tad bit over there, and the blacks we're going to leave for now. That's the sort of basic amendments done. Not much needs to be done to this photo, but basic amendments that will just make the photo look a bit more post-worthy. I don't know if that's the word. The next tools that we're going to use are the kind of tools that make a very big difference to the way your photograph is composed. Personally, my favorite tool that Lightroom has recently introduced is the subject tool. So we're going to select the subject, and what we're going to do is, I'm in focus obviously here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the clarity ever so slightly, just to give me a bit more depth, a bit sharper, a bit more depth, a bit more oomph, a bit more definition, if that makes sense. ain't the right word, but you know. And what we're going to do is we're also going to bring up the sharpness. Now this sharpness is obviously artificial sharpness. It's just going to bring me more sharper than the rest of the image. So it's going to slightly bring it up, maybe by about 15 there. And what we're also going to do is we're going to bring up the shadows ever so slightly, and that will just make me a bit more defined, and obviously bring out the colors of myself, basically the subject. And that would be that. Now you can obviously play around with the temperature. I personally think I'm gonna bump it up slightly and desaturate myself slightly, ever so slightly. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and add another mask. If you look at the image, you can see that on the right, top right, there's light coming in, and on the bottom left, it's a bit darker. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and enhance that or emphasize that, just to give it a bit more depth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a linear gradient, and I'm going to drop it down the bottom, and I'm going to bring the exposure down ever so slightly. You can't do it too much, otherwise it'll look a bit funny. So ever so slightly, and then I'm going to add another linear gradient over the top corner, emphasizing the light that's peeking through. Increase that ever so slightly. Again, not too much, ever so slightly. Now if you look at the before and after on that, you can see a huge comparison. Gives it a bit more depth, a more cinematic look, and it makes the image look more appealing, more... I like to use the word cinematic. I feel like I've used the word cinematic a lot, but I'm sure you guys know what I mean. A much better photograph, a much better image. And that would be the final outcome of the photograph. Now that's something that I usually apply in all my photographs. The S-curve, the subject selection, the linear gradients, all these tools are what make my photos post-worthy on Instagram, if that makes sense. So those are some tips that I recommend. This is the final outcome. The beautiful thing about Lightroom is once you have your edit, you can literally just copy and paste that to all the photos that are similar, and it saves you all that work again. So copied and pasted it. I'm just going to show you guys the photos that we took and all the edits there. Again, very dusky, deserty, desaturated vibe that I'm going for. Beige sort of theme that goes with my Instagram feed as it stands. So hope you guys like them. But if you do have any feedback on what you'd do different, do let me know in the comment section below. I wouldn't edit every single photo the same way, just because no two photos are exactly the same unless they're shot in a sort of similar scenario as we've just discussed. However, again, as I mentioned, these skills are transferable to different elements of photography, whether you're shooting products, whether you're shooting fashion, whether you're shooting food, whether you're shooting people, whether you're shooting buildings. These skills are applicable in those kind of photographs as well. So this is something that I definitely recommend. In order for you to utilize the selection, the masking tool, the linear gradients, you do need the full version of Lightroom, which can be purchased on the Adobe website for a monthly subscription. If you're a student, it's $9.98 per month, and you get Photoshop, Lightroom, and Lightroom Classic. Definitely worth the investment because it does take your photographs to another level. But yeah, guys, you do need full Lightroom access to utilize those tools. Definitely worth the purchase. It's a tool that I use in my everyday business, so definitely something that I recommend. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, do leave a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe. All right, it won't harm you. Just a little subscription. You know, and you know what, here's the thing, right? You won't even regret it. You know why? If you're here, it's because you like the content. If you're still here, it's because you like the content. If you're still here, you know. But now, guys, under no obligation to, but I would really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. If you haven't watched the Marmaris video where that photo was taken, I will leave a link somewhere on the screen or in the description below. Do check it out, and inshallah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.